Imagine choosing death over homelessness. That's what one St. Catherine's man is contemplating.
Afraid to die?
Who was it?
A Pennsylvania man who died earlier this year was re-elected to his position as a state representative, winning by a sizable lead over his left-wing challenger.
A really shocking discovery. The people were told, look, the tabulating machines are not working, so you can cast your ballot, and then we'll put it in this, what they call drawer 3, and we'll take those out, and we'll bring them downtown and count them later.
Unfortunately, as of tonight, we still don't know who has won Maricopa County, either in the Senate race there or in the governor's race in Arizona, because officials are not even close to finishing the count.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, as always, joined by Joe Resinello. And once more, dear brothers and sisters, let us go into the breach on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online. Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, as always, joined by Joe Resinello. And once more, dear brothers and sisters, let us go into the breach on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Remember, go to crusadechannel.com, open the hood, kick the tires, look around. We're sure you're going to want to subscribe. Joe, there's a lot to talk about tonight. We're just going to jump right in. I'm going to say this, Joe. I don't do this on the show all the time. I have myself a little bit. I have a little beverage. You know what I'm drinking because? Not because of the election, not because of I know that's probably what people are thinking. Oh, I'm drowning my sorrows. Joe, I don't cry over elections, but I will tell you what's sad. Our country is done, and we're going to talk about it tonight. It's done. In other words, I don't care anymore. I don't care if Kari Lake wins the governor of Arizona. Our country's finished, and unless we have a spiritual renewal in this country, guess what? The politics is just going to continue to devolve into nothing but chaos and violence, which is exactly what the left wants and the right doesn't care about. And that's the problem, Joe Resinello. And then to start it all off tonight, we're going to jump right in. We have Janet Morana here. We want to discuss the election. Like I said, I know people who cried when George Bush got elected president. Okay, I don't cry over elections. What we do is we react. We have to assess the situation. We have to see what's going on. We have to see what went right. We have to see what went wrong, particularly for Catholics, particularly on the issue of baby killing. All right, because I'll break it to everybody out there. Roe versus Wade was overturned. And in most parts of this country, I don't know of any place that has a complete ban on abortion. So abortion's legal pretty much right now everywhere. So Janet Morana, thank you for coming back to the Frontline with Joe and Joe on the Crusade channel. Always a pleasure to have you on. For those who are not familiar with Janet, she serves as Executive Director of Priests for Life. She's the co-founder of the Silent No More Awareness Campaign, the world's largest mobilization of women and men who have lost children to abortion. Janet, thanks again for coming on.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And I'm sorry, guys, but I'm not going to be a Debbie Downer tonight. I'm going to give you some positive news.
Janet, I'm going to be the angry guy with the vein popping out of my head.
All right.
Joe's going to be the opposite of me, and you're going to be the voice of reason right there in the middle. So you're going to be right in between.
All right.
And we got you for a full segment. I'm going to hand it over to Joe. I know he's got a couple things he wants to jump right in.
Doesn't he want to start with a prayer first?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, that works for me. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women. Blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and the hour of our death. Amen.
Amen.
So, Janet, break it down. How did the abortion issue basically play out in the election, in your view?
Well, first of all, there's a little bit of good news about the Catholic vote. All the pollsters are not in with all the opinions, but one that I heard today was the McLaughlin brothers. They're good pollsters, very conservative. And they said that the Catholic vote went 10 points more for Republicans than Democrat. So that's that nationwide. If you just wanted to look at the numbers across the country, so that was, a little bit of good news.
Quick question, Janet. Do you credit the Hispanic migration from the Democrats that we've been hearing about to the Republicans? Should that
Yes.
I would think that that's a major part of that 10%.
Well, there was now 40% of the Hispanic vote broke for the Republicans, 40%. And that's huge. They've never had that kind of a swing over. And that's why Florida went so red. In Florida here, I mean, we got DeSantis, we got Rubio, but we have 66 counties or 67 here in Florida. Only 4 of them went blue. And one of them that went red was Miami-Dade, which for decades has gone Democrat.
Well,
So-
that's wwhy I was saying about the Hispanic vote, but also
Right,
I think
and-
because of some of the measures. Now we're on YouTube, Janet, so we're going to be careful with the
Right.
little 18-year-old censor sitting behind the computer, just waiting for us to say something wrong. But let's just say certain measures put in place by the Florida state government assisted in the transparency during the whole midterms. And yeah, Miami-Dade went Republican. So
It did. Miami-Dade went Republican, and that was really because of most of the Hispanic vote here in Florida, at least down in that area, is Cuban, and they're immigrants, but they came here legally, or they came, escaping Castro, and so they understand about all these different issues, and they're very family-orientated people. They're very against abortion. It's not in their whole thinking to abort a child. So I think that's why Florida did really well. And we are now a red state. We're not a swing state, which is going to play importance in the 2024 election, right? Because, there's certain key states that in the presidential become swing. Now, Ohio also broke more for the Republicans, and that's another state in a presidential election is key. You can't get to the White House if you can't take Ohio and Florida and so on and so on and so on. So we gained those 2 states more in the red column than purple or blue. So that was really good news. So to me, it's not all bad news. Now, did we get a big red tsunami? I never thought we were going to get a big red tsunami. I thought we would do okay. I think the predictions to make people feel like, oh, we're going to just kill it. There was things that went into play. If you saw what the Democrats were doing near the end, the past few weeks, all right? Right. First of all, we had the Biden give out the free tuition, right? Forgiveness for students. So that's why you had a large amount of young people came out to vote. Now, of course, we know the pro-life students and the pro-lifer kids, they went out to vote too, pro-life. But the amount of people that are sitting with college loans, out there, they didn't even pay attention to the fine print. It was only certain loans that were even going to qualify. They just heard, forgive my loan, and they're going to get the vote. They're going to vote Democrat because you're going to forgive my loan. Of course, we know now that a Republican appointed judge has blocked that whole shenanigans from happening. So that's all a moot point, but it helped them get more votes out, just last week. So that was another thing that happened. And I still think abortion was on the ballot. And the reason why abortion was on the ballot is because they were using scare tactics and lies to scare people. They made them think that we were going to stop everyone throughout the whole United States from even getting abortion, or even women getting medical care for an ectopic pregnancy or miscarriage. So there was a lot of confusion that went on. And so I think that also added to it. But we did have some good gains. I mean, look at what happened in New York State, because I'm a New Yorker. All right. Now, did the Republican win? No, but boy, he got a fair amount of votes. But then what happened was he actually, because of everybody looking down the Republican ticket, a lot of House races he flipped. He flipped some key state, seats, House races in New York State because of they went down that Republican line. So the news out of New York wasn't 100% that we would love it. We would have loved to flip the governor seat, but we flipped some great congressional seats. So, I think what you have to do is, instead of looking at the whole thing with a broad stroke and saying good or bad, I think you have to analyze it area by area, race by race, what happened, what didn't happen. But the Catholic vote turned out, and it was more pro-life than ever before. for the Republicans. I think that was great news. I think the bishops in Michigan, even though they lost Prop 3, they did a fantastic job.
I agree.
And if people listening are from Michigan, what you need to do is write an email or a letter to your bishop and thank him for being a true shepherd and being outspoken, because this was one time the Michigan Catholic Conference got it together. All the bishops spoke in one voice, and some of them were so bold, and some of them actually told the priests in their diocese the weekend before the election, you must preach about Prop 3. You must, like they gave them almost homily talking points and everything. So we have to thank the shepherds of Michigan for doing their job. And why did we lose Prop 3 in Michigan? I'll tell you why. We were outspent almost 10 to 1. The outside money that poured into that state was incredible from the pro aborts. All right. And then, as we all discussed in the program before, the proposition itself, the wording was very confusing. But we can't blame the Catholic bishops or the Catholic Church in Michigan. They came to work and did their job. So
I agree with you. You're 100% on. I
see-
saw definitely.
Janet
see,
Moran
well-
is joining us here at the Frontline with Joe and Joe on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online. Janet serves as the executive director of Priests for Life and the co-founder of the Silent No More Awareness Campaign. Janet, go ahead.
Well, see, the thing is, if we don't take the moments to thank them, then we're not doing our job. See, we're very quick to complain when they don't preach. But now we had a whole state, they were like rowing the boat together. So brothers and sisters, if you're from Michigan, even if you're not, send a letter and say, God bless you, bishops. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well, the other thing too, Janet, is, and we'll talk, I'm going to hand it over to Joe, but the other thing too is, like you said, there's plenty of things that you might point to and about the bishops and this and that. But here's the thing: what I'm getting tired of is when they do act, you still hear people saying, "Well, it's too late. Well, it's too late." Well, they did. You're not out there, so and so, and this guy and that guy and this girl. You're not wearing the bishop's hat. Okay, you don't know what they go through. You don't know what the positions they are in. I agree with you. Okay. I think you can find a lot with the bishops of Michigan to disagree with as far as inaction on things, but they were decisive in this. They promoted the voting against Prop 3. Bishop Cordileone told Nancy Pelosi in California, okay, after pleading with her for 10 years, people always looked at. He was trying to be merciful to her. He was trying to be pastoral to her. In other words, and he said, I've been having conversations with her for years. He comes out, says, don't present yourself for Holy Communion right away in the Catholic community. It's too late. Well, what do you want them to do? You ask them to do something, they do it, and then you tell them it's too late. So I'm glad that you brought that out, Janet, that the bishops actually, in unison, together, okay, spoke out against this atrocious law. Let's keep it moving. Joe Rossinello.
I think what we have to look at here is a couple things. One, I don't think the DNC is the party of the middle class. I really don't. I've said this time and time again, and people are getting crushed on gas and groceries. We could just focus on that. The middle class can't cut it anymore with their leadership. But we have to break these molds, Janet. And I think too many people, and some of them are Catholic, and I think we have to communicate better to them, particularly on the abortion issue, because it goes beyond abortion. It's infanticide. It's infanticide. We saw the legislation that came out of Montana, which is shocking because Montana isn't Massachusetts, Oregon, or Washington or California. At best, it's a purple state, leaning conservative. And the people voted to basically terminate the life of a child that survives an abortion. When I say that and people hear my voice, they may actually think I'm lying. But sadly, I am not. That is infanticide. And frankly, we have to communicate in that language because that's what it is. I don't know what else to say. What are your thoughts on that? Because I'll be truthful with you. That particular state's legislation, along with Kentucky, along with Kansas, which should go to the life side of the house, really didn't show up. And it was disappointing and shocking.
Well, again, like I said, all these propositions were very confusing. And then also, too, we were outspent in those states. The money that came from outside those states by celebrities, by billionaires, dumping money into those states to get those initiatives across the line was tremendous. And the ads, they lied to the people. The Democratic ads were lying. So you had ads that were lying, tons of money, and people do get confused, you know.
Well,
The
I
other thing
agree with
too-
that.
The
I
other
agree
thing
with that.
too is, you know, I researched my ballot. Okay.
Well, so do I. I was just
I
going to
get my
say
mail-in
that, Janet.
ballot and I read every amendment, every proposal, and then the ones I'm not sure, I go online, I see what the pro-life groups are endorsing, you know, what's the right way to vote, even when the judges, everything, down to the last thing. Now, when I went to vote on election day here in Florida, I saw people standing there reading. It was like they were reading these ballot initiatives for the first time. Now, we didn't have a pro-life initiative on our ballot, but I'm just giving you an example. They're first looking at them, and then they're penciling in something. Well, how do you really know what the heck you were penciling in? And I bet you if I went up to them and said, "Do you know what that initiative is that you just voted for or against?" Most of them are going to say, "Well, I didn't really understand it, but I had to fill in something." Unfortunately, guys, that's how some people vote, uninformed. All right. So as much as we do educate, then there's the uninformed that still show up and vote. But you know, there's still good news. All right. So here's just some statistics. Okay. So the voter turnout for 2022 midterms, it was decent. Total, while they're still counting a few more votes, was approximately 105 million ballots were cast. Okay. And it wasn't massive. And it did not surpass the turnout of 2018. See, everyone thought, remember we were saying, oh, the turnout in this election midterms is going to outperform all these other midterms. It didn't outperform 2018. And at least 5 million more people voted for pro-life candidates in this midterm election.
Janet, I got to cut you off. Here's the problem, okay? No
What?
matter how many people turn out, as far as I could see so far, all right?
Right.
I read several articles, seeing people on TV and like on cable news and everything. They're blaming us. Ann Coulter is blaming us, okay? Because we won't use the words. I've heard her say this in the past. She said it recently, and she's saying other things. They're blaming pro-life people because we stand on abortion, abolition. In other words, it's one of the key factors that many conservatives are saying that all of a sudden, Janet, the Republican Party needs to do a little soul searching. We're dealing with the party of death, and you're telling me that I have to search my soul for my position on abortion? That's unfortunately, Janet, one of the things I think we're getting now from conservatives is that there's the infighting, blame Trump and blame the pro-life movement. Because if you weren't so strident in your position, we would have won in Arizona or here or there in some of these races. What say you? Because I think one of the problems is are many people, not all, of course, many people in the conservative movement who do not want to hear abortion abolition. They don't want to hear it. They're looking for a compromise. You, me, and Joe, and many other people are not giving them that compromise. Go ahead, Janet. I know that was a lot.
Well, I mean, we still have so many really good candidates, you know, in the Republican Party who are not afraid to say the word abortion. I mean, just even in the Senate side, you got guys like Ted Cruz, and the list goes on and on. They'll thunder away about it. So Ann Coulter, I mean, she doesn't impress me. One her little opinion. I don't.
I'm just using Janet. I'm just using her as an example, but I'm like watching, let's say, Fox News, and this is that. I guess my overarching point was, it's conservatives saying that conservatives and Republicans need to do some soul searching, and I just took offense at that, as though we're to blame for having lost. I think if we lost in all these elections, I think it's because of all the weak-kneed Republicans out there, not the strong conservative Republicans that we represent. So that's where I was going with that.
Yeah, well, I'm never going to back down from my position. That's not happening. And there's a whole bunch of us out there feel the same way, you know. And I think the fact that, you know, the Republicans really that are saying these things really need to look at the breakdown. Okay. The Hispanic vote, like we said, 40% more broke for the Republicans, and they broke because of abortion. They didn't vote Democrat because of abortion, I think. You know, they saw that the country's going in the wrong direction. They saw the Democratic Party as a pro-death party, and they also they're against illegal immigration when their family got in line, did the process like you're supposed to do, and they're a little miffed that these people are just coming across the border illegally. So they're saying, "Wait a minute, how is this fair? This is
Right.
not fair." So you know, I don't. you know what? It always happens right after an election. People want to do the blame game and point fingers, and what I say to people is, that's not. This is not the time for that. What we really need on our side here is a little more unity, that we have to get smart, because now is the season of education. That's what I was on another conference call before this, and I had to tell all our election, talk to all our election volunteers. We did a Zoom call, and of course, some of them were all, disappointed. I said, guys, look, this is not whether abortion is legal or illegal. We want to make it unthinkable. Because see, then they can pass all the laws they want, and no one's going to buy the product if we make it something that nobody wants to touch with a 10-foot pole. Now, think about this for a minute. When I was a kid growing up in Brooklyn, cigarette smoking was really cool, and everybody was doing it, right? Even though the American Lung Association was already trying to fight and say, "Oh, we need the Surgeon General to ban smoking," and they finally got the thing on the cigarette packages, right? And how many decades did it take till we got to the point where, I mean, at one time when I was a kid, I remember the first time I flew on a plane, people were smoking on the plane. There were little ashtray holders, right? I mean, think back. Smoking was all over the bowling alley. You could barely breathe in there. There was so many people smoking. Now you can't smoke anywhere, just about. And it's gotten to the point where most people find it a disgusting habit. Now, are there still people buying cigarettes at a ridiculous high tax price? Yeah. But look at how many people have just walked away from cigarette smoking, and they're not going to do it ever again. That's what we have to do with abortion. We have to make it a disgusting product. It kills the baby. Look what it does to the mother, and you want nothing to do with it ever, ever again. Okay?
Janet Morano, we got to leave it there. And like we always tell you, we could talk to you for hours. You're our paisan. All right, you're on the front lines. You're way in the breach. Joe and I are just providing you ammunition. You're right up there taking fire. And God bless you. And thank you so much for coming to the show, as you always do.
Okay.
All right, and we'll talk soon. I'm sure we're going to have you back soon to talk about one or another atrocity out there.
All right.
I love your analogy about smoking. That was great.
Well, there's one final word to say, okay? And this is to everyone who's listening, all right? There are going to be some abortions only you can stop, and some lives only you can save. Now it's up to you. Get out there, don't be discouraged, and educate, educate, educate.
Thank you for that, Janet. And it's and you have been very insightful, number one, tonight. Give us some good information, and also very encouraging. So we thank you for that.
Okay. God bless, guys.
God bless you. We'll talk soon.
See you next time.
Yep. Well, you know what, Joe? I started the conversation. I'm not going to lie to you, Joe, a little bit angry. Okay. I think that goes without saying, but leave it to Janet to kind of bring me back a little bit. And I know there was good things in the election. I'm not going to sit here and say that there weren't. And I did think about New York. I think that Florida has shown itself for a number of reasons. It is a red state, and so is Ohio, by the way. Ohio is a red state. I mean, they crucified J.D. Vance. They did to J.D. Vance in Ohio what they did to Blake Masters here in Arizona, and J.D. Vance crushed Tim Ryan, another disgraziad Catholic. So there are encouraging things, and I think she said it right. Listen, we have our own families to take care of. The abortion fight is there in every state in the union. There's always an abortion clinic you can pray the rosary in front of, save a life. We've talked about it before. When there's people praying in front of an abortion clinic, they have a high no-show rate. That was very encouraging and insightful. Joe, your final comments on Janet Morano.
No, it was. I liked her smoking analogy. And to be honest with you, it comes down to education. We have to educate. We have to take back the language. And frankly, I'll be truthful with you. Even if we lost certain states, say because of abortion, the way I look at it, it was worth it, because children's lives are being saved since Roe got put down. So to me, it's worth it. Sorry. I mean, before I worry about like a political victory, I care about a child's life. If one child lived as a result of that decision, it was a victory, and a lot more than one did.
No, Joe, you're spot on. And I think that we have to remember that. I mean, that's the problem, Joe, is that people don't look at it that way. Most people, yeah, all right. For anybody out there listening to me, yeah, I'm about to be judgmental. Most people in America say, no, abortion's okay as long as we could just get along and do business. And conservatives are guilty of that too. Let's just do it for the sake of compromise and blah, blah, blah. Let's say a 3-month abortion ban or a 15-week heartbeat bill. Babies are still going to die. And you know what, Joe? The sad part of it is, and we said it on this show before on the Crusade channel, the American people, left and right, would be totally fine at the end of the day with an abortion compromise. That's our sin, Joe. That's the shame of it all. And you watch how over the next couple of years, it doesn't shake out that way. Abortion will be legal to one degree or another in every state in the United States, and nobody's going to be fighting for those unborn babies except Catholics. Am I wrong or am I right?
Oh, dude, you're spot on. But eventually God will put a kibosh on it. You watch, it'll happen. It went this far and it will happen. You watch, I will bet anything on it.
Well, Joe Resinello, I think you're absolutely correct. I want to say this, though. So, you know, we nobody has to tell Catholics how to fight the abortion battle. Roe versus Wade, whether it was good that it was overturned or not good, whether when you think about it from a pro-life point of view, I think it was a good thing. You go down to the state level, you start fighting at that level. Nobody has to tell us how to fight the abortion battle, okay? And we're going to keep doing it. I know many men here in Arizona, many there in New Jersey. They go up to Montclair, down. We've talked about it before. Father Fidelis, all over the country. Catholic men in particular step up and they pray for all the people involved in these abortions. But another tactic on another issue, or on a variety of issues that I think we're going to have to start taking, Joe, is lawsuits. We need to start. If I'm going to throw something at you, Joe, and then we're going to play a clip. If you asked me why I voted for Trump, we said it before, it was for judges. You agree with me on that?
Absolutely. Number one reason.
And I think that's the only reason that God allowed Donald Trump to become president of the United States. Now, I'm not saying whether or not it's in God's providence that Trump get reelected. I'm not going to go there, but I will tell you this. What he gave us for judges, okay, and up and down the federal judiciary at the Supreme Court, okay, this is the time on a very, let's say political level, this is the time for lawsuits. Start holding them accountable and do what Joe Resinello says. Cost them money. And guess what? You're going to start moving the dial. So we're going to play a clip, Joe, and we're going to come back. As soon as we come back, I want you to jump right in. Now, here's a girl who claims in a lawsuit that she was lied to. We're going to play the clip so you get the details. Jonathan, cue that up. And then we're going to come right back for a discussion.
The transgender clip with Tucker Carlson, John.
Transgender clip. All right, so we're having a little bit of a technical difficulty. We apologize for that. So the net of it is this. This young girl, she was on Tucker Carlson's show. And what she's basically said, she had Harmeet Dillon with her. And Harmeet Dillon is just an incredibly gifted attorney. And what she's doing is she's suing the doctors who did not offer her any sort of advice or counseling or anything like that when she was an underage teen and she was going in for quote unquote gender transitioning surgery. She was mutilated. She had her breast. She was 15 years old, I believe, Joe Resinello. She had her breasts cut off. They cut off her breasts. All right. She and I wish we had the clip, but we don't. But Joe, she's now filing a major lawsuit against these doctors. I say that's the way to go. You got to start holding them accountable in court and costing them money. And guess what? They're not going to want to do it because most of these people are about this anyway.
Well, know what it'll be? Their insurance won't cover them for it. That's exactly how that will work. The insurance company will basically say, because of this lawsuit, you cannot do that type of surgery on anyone under 18 because the liability is too high. That's how it'll work. And that's what moves the dial. Clearly, ideology is trumping science on this issue. I'll say that to anybody and anyone who looks me in the face and defies science that basically spoke on this. not too long ago, all of a sudden is getting trumped by MSNBC ideology. And in this particular case, you are 100% correct. You cost these doctors big bucks, you sue them, and they will not be able to get insurance on that type of surgery, and the issue dies. That is how you beat them. Remember, Al Capone went to prison for tax evasion, and he was a murderer. You have to fight smart. And fighting smart means going through different channels. And I'm telling you, money is how you fight them. That is how you stop a lot of this, and it can be done.
And God bless this girl. Joe, one thing we have to focus on here at the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com. There's a lot of great legal organizations. Joe, how did the left get their agenda through for the last, I'm going to say, at least 7 or 8 decades? The ACLU. The ACLU, a legal organization, supposedly, they're not anymore, and arguably they never were, a civil libertarian organization, okay? That's how they got all their agenda through. Joe, you're talking about a bunch of communists at the ACLU. We have the Thomas More Society. We have the American Center for Law and Justice. We have lawyers like Harmy Dillon. We have Chris Ferrara, who's at the St. Thomas More Society. We have so many attorneys that if, God forbid, something happened to you, like along these lines, or me, where we got fired for what we believe, or for going on a podcast on our own free time, or whatever the case might be, Joe, people need to start picking up the phone. I'm going to hand it over to you. Nick Salmon did it, didn't he?
Absolutely. That's how it has to be done, because ultimately, I'll just use us as an example. We're speaking as Catholic men. I'm entitled to believe certain things that basically comport with my faith, particularly on issues of marriage, particularly on issues on abortion. That is what a Catholic believes. It's not just my opinion. It's a universal opinion of the church. And if you're going to tell me on my own time that I can't say something and speak publicly as a Catholic, well, I'm taking you to court. Period. End of story. And we're going to fight it out there. And I think I can win. I'll be honest with you, at least now. Anyway, I can't speak for as the country moves forward. Years from now, but right now, if I'm a betting man, I'm going to say I'm going to win, because I have a right to be Catholic in this country, and I have a right to speak like one. And if you're going to challenge me on that, particularly on marriage, particularly on abortion, and you find that my speech is hate speech or whatever, well, we're going to figure that out in court, because I don't think it's hate speech. I'm speaking as a Catholic. Maybe not enough Catholics say it. Maybe more Catholics should. Right. And you're not used to hearing it. Well, you're going to hear it from me, because that's what the church teaches. And that's what my baptism basically ordains us to speak about. Our faith. Joe, and that's what we all should be doing.
And Joe, remember something. I think this is so vitally important to bring up at the Frontline with Joe and Joe on the Crusade Channel. There is no such thing, constitutionally speaking, as hate speech. There is no such thing. Now, look, there's some speech, Joe, that is very abhorrent to me, that I don't want to hear, okay? But unless my speech is actually inciting violence, and that is a very narrow legal definition, I have to tell people to go out and commit violence, okay? Outside of that, which is obviously not allowed under the First Amendment, you can't do that. And then we agree with that. We agree you cannot incite violence. I have heard, Joe, some of the most disgusting things online that the left won't say a word about. You want to know something? There is no such thing as hate speech. That's a leftist construct, Joe. They concocted that at the Ivy League law schools, and they said, well, how do we get around the First Amendment? Let's take us for an example. We can't get those damn Catholics to shut up about gay marriage. Well, how do we get them to do that? Let's call it hate speech. If they're critical of gay marriage, we'll say they hate gay people, and we can enact that, or we can have that codified in law so that it falls under this umbrella category of hate speech. And what is really hate speech, Joe? All those things the left doesn't like. The only people who hate what we say are stone cold leftists. Do you understand where I'm going with that? It's
I
like
do.
it's just,
I
hate
do. I
speech is
know
just a means
exactly
by
what you're
which,
saying.
hey, real quick, hate speech is just a means by which they try to shut us down from saying what we know to be true. And we have to push back against hate speech. There is no such thing. Under the First Amendment, there's no such thing as hate speech. None. You get to say what you want. And if you're not inciting violence, guess what? You get to say it and nobody could stop you. What say you, Joe?
Well, it's funny. I brought this up on the show a while back when I was at JP Morgan. I don't work there anymore. Um, Jenner transitioned into like a, a female body. And it was after 5 o'clock, and it was myself and two other people were talking, and one of the directors overheard me, and they actually told my boss in London. I got pulled into an office, and they basically said, you have to watch what you say, blah, 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 blah. It could be offensive to people. And my response to my immediate boss was, how about you're offending me? Your speech offends me as a Catholic. You see, it's a double standard. They have no problem. First of all, it was after work. That's number one. But number two, that conversation offends me. And I count two. You see, this is never like discussed. And this is the type of thing where you take them to court. You take them to court. You're entitled to your opinion in this country. You're free to have it. But guess what? So am I. You don't think so? I can't speak and believe as a Catholic? Well, let's go to court. Let's figure it out. Let the courts figure it out. And here's another thing. I'm not asking for $100 if I sue you, just so you know. And that's how it's going to roll.
No,
That's how we beat them. And that's what all people should do.
And this girl who got mutilated by these doctors, this beautiful girl at 15 years old who didn't have the ability. And by the way, Joe, in her lawsuit, I believe what she's saying is, I did not have the ability to make an adult decision. And you did not help.
Crush them. Those doctors are going to pay. Joe, she was 15. She is going to crush them, and their insurance is going to it's going to triple. And that is how you beat them. I'm telling you right now. I've been saying this. That is how you beat them.
Well, listen, when we found out that Nick Sandmann had settled, I was hoping they'd go all the way. However, I was like, good. Cost them a few $1 million, I'm sure, at least. Okay. The two organizations that he sued. I hope this young girl, Joe, again, I wish we had the clip, but she was talking about she's never going to be able to breastfeed. You're never going to be able to do that. They didn't mutilate her so bad that she can't have children. She will have children, but she's firmly a woman, and she was lied to. Well, guess what? If you're a doctor, so-called doctor, who takes a vow to do no harm, and you lie to these kids, especially these girls that come in, and you mutilate them like that, guess what? You don't want to listen to a couple of Catholics like us? Go ahead. Knock yourself out. What you will listen to is a judge that says you now have to pay that girl as an individual doctor $50 million. And the hospital at which they performed it is going to have to pay that girl $500 million. Joe, you know who's going to be performing those surgeries on minors? Nobody.
That's
and
right.
That's what we need.
I agree.
And that's what we need.
100%.
Agnes is in the chat room. I just want to respond. Agnes says, where were the parents of this girl? I'm going to say this. I don't agree with the parents. However, the parents, it seems to me from what I've read, were very confused. They did not know how to deal with their 15-year-old girl, all right, saying this to them, thinking that she was a boy, okay, and they took her to these doctors who then subsequently went ahead and mutilated her. They are culpable to a degree. I think they were confused. They did not expect this to come from their daughter. They really didn't know what to do. I don't know what their background is. I don't know what their religious background is. I don't know. But I'm going to show a little sympathy for the parents. They trusted the doctor to try to help their daughter. And the doctor went ahead and cut her breasts off. and mutilated her. So, Agnes, in fairness, I know what you're saying. That was my first impulse, but I think that was the reason. So, you're at the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo and Joe Rossinello. Joe, when you're talking about these things, you know you're way in the breach. When you're on the Crusade channel, you know you're way in the breach. Always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Last week, we were very honored to have on Rick Barrett from the Crusade channel. We were talking about the midterms and everything else. We're very, 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 very grateful to Mike Church and everybody at the Crusade channel who have always been very gracious to Joe and I and let us have the station as a platform to broadcast our show. Now, Joe, here's the thing. You want to talk about ballots and mail-ins and this and that? You could do all. Okay, fine. Let's have a debate about all that. But Joe, not only should dead people not vote, I don't think we should be electing dead people to be in office. Now, I don't know, Joe. Maybe YouTube is going to say I'm off the rails for actually saying something so audacious, but I don't think that someone who's dead should be on the ballot and should actually get elected. But yeah, we have a clip. I'll let the clip first speak for itself, and then we'll come back and have a conversation.
Pennsylvania man who died earlier this year was re-elected to his position as a state representative, winning by a sizable lead over his left-wing challenger. A special election will be held to choose a proper candidate to take his seat. Democrat Tony DeLuca, the longest-running Pennsylvania state representative at 39 years, died last month of lymphoma.
I have proved myself over the years being a leader, being able to work on both sides of the aisle, being able to move legislation.
Because of his recent death, election authorities were unable to change the ballots. Many voters chose him over the Green Party challenger. Pennsylvania House Democrats tweeted their condolences. Some observers speculate that many voters chose DeLuca knowing he was dead in order to force a special election, rather than vote for his third-party opponent. Livingston.
Now, my larger point, and Joe, I'm going to hand it right over to you. My larger point is this. We're the United States of America. We're supposed to, we have, in the case of wars and things like that, we have contingency after contingency after contingency. Are you going to tell me that in the case of an election, we don't have a contingency plan in case somebody dies? Like, is this like one of those things? All the smartest people, Joe, tell us that they're in charge. I'm in charge and I went to Harvard. I'm in charge and I went to Brown. I'm in charge and I went to the University of Pennsylvania. Well, if you're so in charge, you should actually be looking forward to these things that may happen and do something about it. Here's a guy gets on the bat. Here's a guy gets elected and he's dead. I mean, Joe, my larger point in even wanting to talk about the story is that do we have our heads in the sand? Do we think about these things? Joe, I don't know anymore sometimes.
Well, what it is, two things. One, people vote based upon their identity. It's identity politics. They don't go against the tribe. Doesn't matter. The person's dead, whether they're a weak candidate, whether they just had a stroke. It doesn't matter. And people almost don't matter. It's platform. Like, it doesn't matter who the person is. I mean, granted, Dr. Oz in Pennsylvania could have been a stronger candidate. He wasn't from Pennsylvania. He's from New Jersey. That could turn people off, and I could respect that. But Fetterman is handicapped. He's mentally handicapped. I'm not trying to be cruel. It's just a fact. He had a stroke, and it's very clear that he did. He's not capable of holding that office to the degree that he needs to represent the people of Pennsylvania. But that doesn't matter anymore. You have to go along with the tribe, even if you cut off your nose to spite your face, even if you can't afford the gas prices, even if you can't afford the grocery bill, all of which were a result of the green energy plan, which turned off gasoline, which triggered the inflation. People say the Republicans didn't have a plan. How's this for a plan? We start using our own energy and develop the electric car. When the grids are up and running, when the technology is available for everyone, we go to it. But it's not there yet. So you turn it off and you punish people. But it's the tribe. We have to vote for the tribe, whether the person has a stroke or whether they're dead or alive. It's pathetic. It is sad Joe, I'm telling you right now, I shake my head. This
So do
country
you know
is
what this country's
it's so
been
broken.
chopped into? You got half the country that wants sexual liberation and they don't care. I think that's a stone cold fact. They want sexual liberation and they just don't care. They're going to vote for abortion. They're going to vote for transgenderism. They're going to vote for homosexuality. They're going to vote for all of it. And then you got the other half that I mean, I don't know. It seems like they bought into a lot of that too. And, they don't want to stand on principle at all. They're only worried about many times. They're only worried about money. Not that the left doesn't. Okay. They're only worried about their status. I'll take care of my kids. I don't care about yours. I don't care about any of that kind of stuff. I mean, it seems to me that you have this divide that doesn't really like you have the one side who's sexually liberated. They get rewarded with sexual liberation. They're too stupid to realize that sexual liberation is really their slavery. Okay. And we pray for them because they are stupid. Okay. Because if you bought into that, I don't care if you went to Yale or Brown or Dartmouth. If you bought into sexual liberation and you don't realize that those are chains, you're stupid. Okay. You're not an intelligent person. I don't care if you got A's on your midterms and your finals at the Ivy League. And on the other hand, you got a lot of people on the other side who stand on principle, who are outwardly being punished by their government. And that's not me being hyperbolic, Joe Resinello. Biden, Merrick Garland, they're going after parents who are challenging the school boards. They're calling them white supremacists. They're calling them all sorts of names. The MAGA movement is the worst thing that ever happened to America. It's just a bunch of terrorists. I'm not saying we're MAGA, but we voted for it twice. Okay, we're terrorists. So you got the one side that's too stupid to realize they're chains. The other side who realizes they don't want to be in chains are being punished by the government. Joe, however you look at it, America's toast, brother.
Oh, dude. You know what? You're right. I'll be truthful with you. I think it's the horse is out of the barn, Joe, and it's going to get much worse before it gets better, if it gets better at all. I'll be honest with you. My wife and I were chatting about it, and what she thinks is going to happen is basically as the country continues to become more decadent, and it is exponentially becoming more decadent, the Republicans will join because they'll say to themselves, we have no opportunity holding these positions. And if we want to have a piece of the pie and it's about power, they're going to embrace a lot of this because it's about power. And here's the thing, and this is why it's a spiritual battle. Joe, it's about changing your mind and heart on abortion, on traditional marriage. And people aren't doing it, and they don't want to hear it. And when people see that on the Republican side of the fence, they're simply going to say, we have to get a piece of this pie or there's no pie to be had. And that's going to happen. Mark my words. You heard it right here.
Well,
The country is exponentially rolling down the hill, dude. It won't. It's out of control. And I'll be honest with you. And I was talking to a friend of mine. I went to visit him. He was in the hospital yesterday. Shout out to Larry Magloshetti. Keep him in your prayers. He's having surgery this week on Wednesday.
Larry, we love Larry.
Dude, I'll be honest with you. God is going to fix this.
Oh,
and it's not going to be pretty. People I just said it and they're laughing. You won't be laughing.
Joe, I want to seize on that a second. Whether we get to our last segment or not, I want to talk about this. I've had to hear the atheists, and I love beating up on them, Sam Harris and the rest of them. See, because they don't like scripture. Okay, that's why they won't read it. That's why they just dismiss it as being superstition. It's lore, it's myth, or whatever the case might be. I believe that, and I know to be true, that God told the Israelites to put the ban on the Canaanites. But do you know why? Now, Richard Dawkins would say that, well, your God is a homophobe and a misogynist and all these things. And he says it with his accent, so it makes him sound smart, okay? And that God hates people somehow because he did that. No, what God detests, and why I bring that up, is a depraved culture. And what nobody who cares about, the new atheists, they don't care about looking at scripture. They certainly don't care about looking at history, okay? The Canaanites were a depraved group of people, okay? Child sacrifice, and all sorts of things I'm not going to mention while we're here at the front line on the Crusade channel. And God told the Israelites, go in there and put the ban on them. Why? To wreck their culture. Because their culture, if left unchecked, was going to spread. Now I know I'm going off a little bit, but that's the whole point, is that when God punishes, it's because you've now gone beyond a certain point. And the Canaanites did that, the Sodomites did that, the Gomorrahites did that. Okay, they went beyond a certain point where God said, they're not coming back. And I have to save these other people before they get infected with this. But what was God's real target there? Their culture was depraved. Joe, I'm throwing it over to you. I think our culture is completely depraved.
Oh, there's no question, Joe.
I don't think we're any better than Rome or Canaanites or the Sodomites or the Gomorrah. I don't think we're better than. I think we are completely depraved.
Joe, the story you just talked about, a 15-year-old girl got her breast lopped off. Adults convinced her that that was going to make her happy, or at least went along with her and told her and agreed with her. Adults, highly educated adults, a 15-year-old. We just voted in the state of Montana, the people, that a child that survives an abortion, their lives have to be terminated. That's infanticide. That's not even abortion. That's infanticide. You're going to tell me that that is a healthy society?
Right.
Step back for a minute and think about it. These are crimes that cry out to God for vengeance. And it's not going to be the MAGA Republicans that are going to commit the vengeance.
Joe,
It's
let me
going to be, I'm going to tell you right now.
No, Joe, no, I want to just say something though. Remember though, it just occurred to me. Why do those cry, or why is it a cry that goes out to God for vengeance? And the reason why I'm bringing it up is because God is so patient. He's so patient with us, okay, giving us opportunities to repent. That's why the cry has to go up to ask God, please intervene. Here's the thing, though. God, in his mercy, okay, will give us time to repent. But when God's mercy is at an end, all right, and he's going to bring an end to an evil, sorry, you better watch your butt. And America, if I could sum up the theme of this Frontline with Joe and Joe, America, you better watch your ass. Okay, you think you're getting away with something and you're not. You think you're promoting freedom and you're promoting butchery. This young girl's getting her breast cut off, abortions. A baby can be killed after they fail at killing the baby in the womb. They want the legal right to kill the baby outside of the womb. Joe, you're going to tell me that a loving God is going to just sit by and idly do nothing?
Like I said, God will fix it, and it won't be pretty. We've seen that with societies that were decadent. They've collapsed. And that is what, and if it collapses, it's not going to be pretty. And that's the direction we're going. And like I said, what can I say? But I'll be truthful with you, Joe. At this point, words, it's like people don't want to listen. It's like we're barreling over the cliff. And here's another sad statistic, because I want to get to that last story in Canada, but just
Go ahead.
Because that's another example of what we're talking about. You know, a lot of people who vote for the Democrats, they'll listen to some of these things that we talked about, and they're legit. Look them up. They'll say, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with the infanticide. I don't agree with the 15-year-old basically having her breasts lopped off in a surgery. Who'd you vote for? Joe Biden. Why? I'm a Democrat.
Right.
It's a disconnect. It's a disconnect. I can't afford my bills. I can't afford my gas. I can't afford my groceries. Who'd you vote for? I voted for Joe Biden. Why? And this is the sickness, Joe. It's a sickness. And I watch it. I tell you this all the time. I look at the news. When I look at the news in the morning, drinking my coffee, I just shake my head. And I talk to myself and I just say, how sad, how terribly sad
Joe Resinello, let's get to our last clip because this is sadder. I'm sorry we're not being Debbie Downers, but this is what's going on out there. Okay. John, if you could cue up. Now in Canada, you have to choose between poverty or death. I mean, let's watch the clip and then we'll talk about it.
Imagine choosing death over homelessness. That's what one St. Catharines man is contemplating. Tonight on City News, we continue to delve into medically assisted dying and how some believe it is their only option to living in poverty.
Are you afraid to die?
Who isn't? Yeah,
Amir Farsood has applied for medically assisted dying, known as MAID. He lives in constant agony due to a back injury, but has started the process for end of life because his rooming house is up for sale and he can't find anywhere else to live that he can afford.
Here's what I'm going to say, Joe, because we don't have a lot of time. I will say this. If this man was Catholic and he looked into Catholic orders, and I'm not blowing this out of my you-know-what because we know orders like this, he could find shelter. He could be treated with dignity and respect. I think of the Franciscan Friars of the Renewal who help men just like this, who are damaged, who are injured. They have health issues. Okay. They're on the street. They're not, this guy obviously is not addicted to drugs. It looks like, okay. There is help for him. What is the Canadian government promoting? You know what? If you don't want to be poor, don't seek the help of that Catholic Church over there. They're just a bunch of authoritarians. How about you just check out? That's the culture we live in. Joe, I got to give you the final word. Go ahead.
Notice how the door is opening wider and wider when it comes to euthanasia. It was just for the very sick and the very old. I don't advocate for that, but when it first opened, that was the door. Then it turned into those who were mentally ill. Now it's turning into those who are poor. The door will get wider and wider. Who said that? The Catholic Church.
Right.
So did we, by the way. People don't want to listen until it's at your front door. This is dangerous and it's sad. But why does someone even consider it? Because the world does not value life. It looks at you as a consumer. What can you produce and what can I get out of you? And once you cannot produce or get nothing, give nothing out like to the society, you're worth nothing. Your life has no value. God doesn't look at you that way. To be a child of God, you have value, innate value. And to be honest with you, Catholics, we believe in womb to tomb because of that. And also suffering, to be truthful with you, leads you to God. There's what's it called? Graces that come out of suffering. And if you don't believe in Christ, I got news for you. Suffering has no meaning. And that's why the world is lost, because we all suffer and we all die. And without that meaning, Joe, we're lost. And this is the direction we're going in. And it's sad. And I'm going to tell you this right now for everyone who hears my voice. It's not working and it's not going to. It's not working and it's not going to. And it's only going to get worse. And I got news for you. It's coming to a theater near you.
Joe, let me just say this in parting, okay? C.S. Lewis said, if you're going down the wrong path, okay? I'm paraphrasing. If two people are going down the wrong path, okay, the one who stops in his tracks, turns around and goes back to the place they started from is the most progressive, because the person who's trying to still look for a solution is just going to keep going further and further down that wrong path. The most progressive person is the one who stops and goes back to the point where they started. Okay, that's where we have to get to. And that means getting back to God, our families, and our country, and resisting that. That's where we have to go. Stop trying to look for solutions out there in the culture, because it's not going to happen. Joe, we have to leave it there. I think this was a great conversation. We want to thank Janet Morana for joining us here at the Frontline with Joe and Joe. So everybody out there, follow Priests for Life. That's Father Pavone's organization. They've been in the breach and on the front line of the abortion battle for a very long time. Thank you for joining us at the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. We encourage everyone to go to the crusadechannel.com and go there. test it out, do the free trial, look under the hood, and we know you're going to want to become a subscriber. And wherever you see Joe and I on social media, particularly at the Frontline with Joe and Joe on YouTube, primarily right now until we change that, please like, subscribe, and share. And remember, until the next time, that our conversation is your conversation, and that conversation is going on everywhere. We'll talk to you soon. Securing your data privacy is more important than ever. Start your free privacy scan and see how much of your data is being sold on the internet. Dataseal.io is the best and most affordable way to secure your data from ending up in the wrong hands. Remove your data today from the internet with Dataseal.io. That's Dataseal.io.